Starting. And we're live. I think maybe I'll just give some people a couple minutes to shuffle in. Let me make sure that I can hear everybody.
Can you still hear me?
Dorsey, I can hear you.
I'm here.
Okay, Stephanie, I can hear you as well. Perfect. Viewer count is going up right now. People are tuning in. This is beautiful. Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
Can I hear my dogs?
Yes, Dorsey has some dogs that you may hear in the background. Okay.
And what's funny, the treats that I bought them to the bag and ate them already. I'm seeing the tag on one of them. Smart little dogs.
People are trickling in. Probably give it another minute or so. All right. Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So thank you everybody for tuning in live. Thank you for making it, and all your friends and family that couldn't make it. It's okay, it'll be recorded. We're gonna post it on the website afterwards. So this virtual panel is titled Women in Tech, Defining and Finding Success in a Male-Dominated Field. So the reason why I chose to do all women is because I definitely knew I wanted to make this career panel tech focused because I have always been interested in tech. I know that it's a growing industry, it's a growing field. However, I never knew exactly where I personally would fit into tech. So I started to kind of look at different software engineers on LinkedIn, and I noticed that whenever I just typed in software engineer, and there's just pages and pages of people in tech that just don't look like me. So I just wanted to get a conversation going with people who had similar experiences to mine for questions that I may have. And this is also for students who know they're interested in tech and kind of want more guidance as to how to go about navigating the different opportunities, what they should be doing now, what challenges they may encounter in the future. And so now that introduction is finished, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I am Chanel. I graduated from UC Berkeley, class of 2016. I currently work at Uncubed as the university's program coordinator. And I'll go ahead and pass this over to, did we lose Dorsey?
I think she just put it on mute for now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and pass this over to Stephanie first then.
Okay, my name is Stephanie. I went to college at Princeton. I got a PhD in mathematics at Harvard, and I was in academia as a professor at the University of Michigan for 2 years, and then I worked in Stockholm, Sweden for 4 years at another university there. After leaving academia, I worked in finance for 4 years in high-frequency trading, and then I moved over to tech. At the age of 36, I started my first tech job, and I've been at Foursquare for almost 4 years now.
Awesome. Okay, and Dorsey?
Hey, so my name is Dorsey. I graduated from Iona College with a BS in computer science, a minor in math. I really like math. Sorry. And then went on to work for Pepsi for about a couple of years, and then decided to get an MBA. Sorry. Decided to get an MBA. They're trying to fight over a bone. Got an MBA in information systems. And then went on after that to just work at various jobs and noticed that what I was doing is very specialized. And so I then did kind of like a career shift and taught myself PHP, CSS, JavaScript, and HTML, and ended up making people's websites for a couple of years just to get the hang of it and to learn a little bit further. And then after that, got a job at a small software engineering company, and then later a job at Adobe, where I am currently for the past 2 years working on the Behance product. And I've recently switched over to analytics, which is very interesting to me.
Okay, awesome. So it seems like you two have a lot of, well, maybe because Stephanie, it seems like you recently joined the tech industry, but maybe Dorsey, this is something that you've always kind of wanted to do. Is that what it sounds like?
Yeah, I literally, it's actually pretty sad. Well, actually not really. So when I was in high school, I took the Keirsey temperament test, which kind of explains to you all the different careers that you'd be good at. And one of them was computer science. So I literally went through the list and figured out which one sounded more interesting, and computer science was the one. And so I decided to major then in school. It was a little bit hard because I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and then decided to go into computer science and went into my first class and looked around and realized that no one looked like me, and stood up and said that. And all the boys looked at me like I was crazy, and I said that was okay. And yeah, went on to actually be the only female to graduate with a CS degree that year.
Okay, wow. And Stephanie, you said you just recently started to enter tech spaces?
Well, I mean, when I was younger, I always thought I was going to be a professor, and so my ultimate goal is to get tenure. When I left academia, I started working in finance, but I think I don't think my heart was in it, because I don't think it was a job which I fell into by default, because finance hires a lot of mathematicians to study the stock market. But what I did at the companies I work for, I think, is not so different from what I do now. I'm a data scientist at Foursquare, and my title at the hedge funds was quantitative analyst, and it was using similar technology and looking at large amounts of data and trying to find patterns in data and working with machine learning. So in that sense, I think it's maybe I've been working in tech for longer than 4 years. So yeah.
Okay, and then so let me just distinguish. Stephanie, you are a data scientist.
Yeah.
Dorsey is a software engineer. So me, I have no idea like exactly what, I've heard software engineer before, but I've never heard of data scientist. So could you tell me what that is exactly?
Well, I can tell you what I do. I'll put it in the context of what Foursquare does. Foursquare is a location intelligence company which tries to figure out information, foot traffic, about where people go in the world, and we use mobile technology for that. And so the way I explain it to my parents, who are older in a different generation, I say it's like the Nielsen ratings, but instead of what people are watching on TV, we say where people go, so we can detect trends in national brands, and we use that data partially for insights and just for publicity, because that keeps Foursquare on the map. For one example of a data insight, which I actually love, at our company, we celebrate something called we call it National Fall Off the Wagon Day. And it's because we know when people go, at the rate at which people go to gyms, and we know at the rate at which people go to fast food. And then we know January 1st, there's always an uptick in gyms and a downtick in fast foods. And then the first week of February, every single year, the first week of February, we see that those two trends, they'll swap, and then they'll remain swapped for the rest of the year. And so we always celebrate that. We think that's kind of funny and it's insightful. But you can understand that there's actually business value for this too. A lot of companies want to understand whether or not they're running campaigns that are working, or just trends in national brands, or even places like with the best place to open up the new store in the neighborhood, which gets the foot traffic that they want. These are the kind of insights which Foursquare delivers, and I work on the machine learning models which create these insights. So
do you have to, pardon my ignorance for this question, do you have to know how to code for that position?
Well, it depends. At Foursquare in particular, there are data scientists that are in the analytics org, and there are data scientists that are in the engineering org, and you have to know how to code more for engineering. But even the analysts have to know how to use, I mean, they have to know how to use a computer very proficiently and be comfortable writing some scripts. So they might not be writing production code or server code, unlike the data scientists and the engineering org. So.
Okay. And then, hey, Dorsey. So I have like an idea of what Stephanie's doing at work. Could you tell everybody what your day-to-day kind of looks like?
Ooh, well, lately my day-to-day has been a lot of meetings, which is fun and cool because I like to talk to people. But
We don't see you on the video. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to save some bandwidth. So my day-to-day now is mostly meetings, but I do get to code a lot, which is really fun to me. I love the whole idea of having a problem and trying to solve it, or just seeing inconsistencies and trying to fix them. And I think that that's what made me stay in love with software engineering is, this ability to make something that wasn't already there, and kind of move people's lives around by making this piece of code do some stuff that they would probably do manually.
Okay.
So day to day is basically walk in, eat. I probably eat 3 times while I'm at work, 4 times sometimes. It's really chill in my office. So like a lot of heads down time is mostly putting on headphones and just zoning out and working. And then eat again, and then maybe code some more and then eat again. Yeah.
Lots of eating at Adobe.
Yes, I love to eat.
So how did you find yourself at Adobe? Like what kind of steps, like did you Google like engineering jobs? Like what does a job search look like for you?
I actually went on a couple of different websites. So it's funny because my little sister works for Indeed, but I was on Indeed. I then actually went to actual companies' websites. So I've been using Adobe products for years. I've used Photoshop for years. I use their Audition, which is a music mixing software, to make cheerleading music for a cheerleading team that I used to coach. I would also use, Illustrator. I worked for a friend who made T-shirts, so I'd like vectorize images in Illustrator. So I literally saw it. It was through a lot of web searching, and then found Adobe, and then actually went on their actual website versus trying to go through a job sourcing website and applied directly there. And I find that can be sometimes a little bit better than going through like a third party. My second job, I went through a third party, and it was through Robert Half Technologies, and I just posted my resume to their website, and then they called me. So that was very easy, laid back, and I wasn't really looking for a job. So when they called me, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'll check it out. But yeah, mostly it's just going to jobs or going to companies that I adore and love, and then just going on their website and seeing what jobs do they have open. And anything that says engineer, anything that says software, I just look at the recs and figure out how well of a fit could I be for that.
And that's an interesting.
And then tailor my website to the job.
When I was looking for people to speak on the panel, I wanted to have people that worked at familiar companies, but I found myself kind of stuck. And it's so simple if you just unlock your phone and look at all the apps that you have. Like those are like the software engineers. Those are the people that I was looking for. So it's cool that I ended up finding people like, Stephanie from Foursquare, Adobe. Everybody knows Adobe, so that was perfect too. And Steph, how did you find yours?
I'm a firm believer in loving what you do and loving the company that you work for. It's funny because I say I drank the Kool-Aid, because I just love using the products. And so it makes you working on the products a lot stronger of a tie than working on something that you really could care less about.
That sounds good. And Steph, how did you find yourself at Foursquare exactly? What did your job search look like? Or how do you?
Actually, every job I've ever had, I've been recruited by a friend. And at Foursquare, I'm very much involved with the recruiting. And I would say from the other side, also from looking at it from the company side, I think the best recruiting to companies typically happens through a network which I know is very hard for entry-level people coming out of college, or people who are younger who don't have the network. But once you get your foot in the door and you get that first job, then it's actually a lot easier to find other jobs through the network that you have, especially if you work at a company with good people who end up, when they move on, they end up at other good companies. I think the second best source of talent, which Foursquare has, by the way, about 50% of Foursquare hires come from the network.
Okay.
The second best source of talent I've seen has been through, I guess, so what Dorsey called third parties, through recruitment agencies. And I would say probably the most unreliable source of talent, even though there is talent, but the most unreliable one are people who just respond to there's just so much volume which responds to a listing that's on the website, that it is probably the hardest way to get your resume noticed. And there's tons of talent out there, but just sometimes it just doesn't get seen. And it's probably the most difficult way. So if you're interested in working for a company, I think it's always good to reach out to people and ask them. I get people reaching out to me every week and just inviting me to coffee, and I come and I talk to them about what I do. And it really helps a lot to just be able to put a face and to understand like what somebody's interest is. So
I know, like, kind of similar, like when a student has to go to office hours to talk to their professor, like it can be really nerve-wracking. And I feel like, if everybody's asking to take you to coffee, like how can I make myself as like a tech applicant? How can I stand out?
I think you just have to be yourself. And I know that sounds so generic and so insincere, but it helps for me, and I think this would help for Dorsey. Well, it helps for me. Like, I work on a company that has 3 iPhone apps, and it helps for me if they're actually users and they understand the product. And it certainly helps to do your research. I know that sounds generic, but I've had people take me out to coffee and then they ask me, what does Foursquare do? And I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to like explain to you what I do. And it would have been nice if you tried to understand this first. And it just made me feel like they didn't have any interest in working for the company. They just wanted to have a job, which is something I completely understand as well. But maybe it would be good to to know about the company and to like the product that you want to work on, to back up what Dorsey was saying. I agree 100% that it makes a huge difference when you like what you're working on. So, yeah.
Okay. And so
yeah, sorry, just to talk to that. I actually worked for a financial company, and I thought that was probably, just for me, because I just wasn't into it, it was one of the drier of my experiences working. But like when I worked for Pepsi, I was like, I drink Pepsi products. This is really cool. And I enjoyed that time. So back to that whole idea of, really liking where you work. And then to Stephanie's point, I search the heck out of a company before I even apply. Because it may be even a new company that you don't really know about, and you don't know until you research it. So it may be something that sounds cool, but you've just never heard of it. So just come prepared if you're going to talk to someone who works somewhere.
So how do you dedicate like your energy towards these companies? Like if everybody wants to work, everybody loves Instagram, everybody loves Google, everybody, like, how do you sort through the different tech opportunities there are, especially since it's a growing industry? Like, how would you recommend going about the job search?
It was very interesting, actually. We just interviewed someone at Adobe, and the girl asked the most interesting questions, and something that I never would think, but it makes sense. She asked what's in the pipeline of projects to work on. That allows you to understand what kind of things the company is doing. And it allows you to see if that aligns with what you want to do. At my last company, the small software engineering company that I worked for, I looked at some of their past apps, and those looked cool. And then I was like, okay, well, this seems like what they're working on seems like something I want to do. So it's researching and looking at trends of what they work on, or asking people, like, what do you work on, to understand if it makes you happy, what jazzes you up to go to work.
Steph, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with everything she says. So the one thing I would say, you did mention Google. Google is a huge company, and they support a lot of different projects, and a lot of the projects are wildly successful, and some of them are not. And I think Google and Facebook should be viewed as more like their own ecosystem of apps instead of like, I work for Google. You should certainly ask people on Google what specific project they're working on. And I think it's good to go to meetups and just ask around to what the different projects are. And it's actually, it's very legitimate to ask what company culture is like at different places as well.
So before you found yourself, Stephanie, at Foursquare, what do you think, like, if you could do your job search is through people, but I'm trying to figure out, is there anything you would rather, like, you would do differently?
In terms of my job search?
Yes.
I actually think I probably would have joined tech a little bit earlier and left finance earlier if I had known. I think it would have been a good decision for me. So.
And what about you, Dorsey? Is there anything you wish you would have done differently in terms of job search?
I feel like everything I've done has brought me to this place where I'm in a pretty good place. I probably would have shifted to like web development or web engineering or engineering for websites sooner. I'm glad that I did the shift, and I'm glad. But I think that a lot more doors would have been opened up to me being in a broader spectrum than where I was when I graduated out of college. So just getting into like the web space a little bit sooner would have probably been where I wanted to go. I learned Java in school, and there are not many companies these days that use it, but it's great to understand. Like once you learn a programming language, it basically, all programming languages have some kind of similarity to it. Just the syntax is different. So learning one won't stop you from learning another very easily, but I probably would have taught myself that a little bit sooner. And maybe gotten into mobile a little bit too.
And so for students that are currently in school, is there something that you recommend that they start doing now to set themselves up for future success?
Sorry, say that first part again.
I said, is there anything you recommend for current students, like students that are in school right now, to start doing so that when they do have to pursue careers, they're kind of geared more towards a successful outcome?
I would say, so, so sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to say real quick to that point, I think that the better you start like programming, the better it is. They have a lot of programs that help you with it, which are really cool. Also, the fact that a lot of jobs, like your first jobs, are going to be hard when you're coming out of college if you don't have anything to show. So a lot of side projects. I remember before interviewing for my last job, I was doing a food project. I was on this particular diet, and it was learning. Hey guys, can you chill? Mom's on the phone. I was on this particular diet, and it was like a diet calculator, and it's something that I knew and I was really close to, and was able to create my own software to track it and stuff like that. So side projects are really good too.
I would agree with all that. This is kind of it's a difficult question for me to answer, because I think it is good to have on your resume if you can contribute to an open source project, if you can have a good GitHub portfolio of private projects, if you can have a blog. For people who are interested in data science, it's good to write blog posts about data related issues that you see. At the same time, I hesitate to give this advice, because I think that this kind of advice, I think in particular is, and also I forgot, participating in hackathons, which is something which didn't exist when I was in college, but now there are some very good hackathons where you can go meet people and collaborate with other people and develop projects, and also a network with other talented people your age. I hesitate a little bit with this advice, because in our diversity meetings at Foursquare, there has been a little bit of pushback, because participating in open source projects and also having a GitHub, a GitHub repository that has a million different projects. This is something that's definitely harder for women than it is for men. This is definitely true, and the research and statistics show it. And it's also something where I think sometimes it's good to have work-life balance, and it's good to have a hobby that isn't related to computer science. And so It's something I struggle with personally. Like, is this the kind of culture I want? Like, do I want somebody who's just absolutely crushing the code and like living on the computer 24/7, or do I not want that? And so I know I gave a really vague answer, but it's actually for me, it's not a simple issue as in just like write more code, because that's not always what the best thing for a company is. So. Chanel, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, we talked earlier, previous to our call, about how within the growing industry, it's hard to kind of maintain talent within some companies. So where do you think current tech recruiters are falling short?
Recruiters or companies in general?
Companies, recruiters, like how do you think we can go about getting people jobs in a better way?
And do you think falling short in terms of diversity or just employees in general?
We can speak to both.
Okay, all right. I think that the most important thing for recruiting and retaining diversity talent, which generally speaking is better for most tech companies, is to have female leadership. And I mean female management, people who are just visible on the executive team who are female or who are non-white males. So anybody who's just not the stereotype. It's a little bit of a turnoff when you go to a company webpage and you hit the about button, and then it'll be pages, 12 pictures of people who look completely identical and none of them look like you. To me, that's very discouraging, and you just don't feel like you would fit into the company. So diversity and leadership is the most important. For me, in terms of recruiting, I think diversity on the interview panel also is very, very important. I absolutely will not join a company if I get interviewed by 5 people who look and talk exactly the same. It's a deal breaker for me. I want to ask them, like, look, you have all these people in your company. Can you just, could I speak to somebody who's not exactly in the same, who doesn't look like a clone of each other? And then, so diversity on the interview panel is good. Diversity among coworkers is good. And I think having visible mentorship opportunities for people who might not fit the mold, for people who are not, who don't fit the tech mold, I think that's important too. But I will double down on the fact that I actually think that there needs absolutely to be more diversity in upper management across the entire tech industry.
Yeah, I agree with a diverse, panel of people that are interviewing you, because then you feel more comfortable. You feel like you can relate to different people, that this company encompasses a lot of different ideas, and so you may fit in. And I think that a lot of times when you're interviewing, you want to know if you fit in, like if I would feel comfortable and if I would fit in. So just making an environment where the person feels like they can fit in. And if you don't have an environment like that, then
yeah. And diversity comes in many forms. It's not just gender or race. I think it even comes, another important one that's to me is basically family diversity. If you are the first person with kids who's working at a company full of single unmarried people, it's going to be very difficult. There's also diversity, even small things like eating preferences. If you want to be vegetarian or vegan, you want to maybe not work with a bunch of carnivores all the time. And I think socioeconomic diversity, some people grow up with more money or much less money than other people, and it affects them. And I think they bring a different perspective to the workplace. And all these things need to be taken into account. So.
I agree with the different perspectives. We did get a couple people reach out to us saying that they didn't think that this panel alone would be useful for them because they didn't identify as a woman. And so we had to kind of explain to a lot of people that, it's in the workplace, you're going to work with women. And that's why it's very important to have empathy for what it's like to be in a woman in a workplace where, you're uncomfortable. We want our fellow employees to be comfortable, especially if you're going to be leading projects, and you want a good, a good team, what is the word I'm looking for? Basically, you want to be comfortable. You want everyone to be comfortable because that's going to create the best outcome, the best product, correct? So I think it's very important for people to understand that the different experiences that your employees or teammates may have can affect your future product.
Right. I don't think it should be any stranger of having a panel of all women than it should be having a panel of all men.
Of course, but of course, people will tune in to the all men panel, no questions, like because it's default. But it's interesting to see, like even with the numbers on our end, the difference in interests of the panels because it is an all woman panel. Yeah. But that does kind of speak to why this is an issue and why we do need to have these conversations and why we should be talking about this. Dorsey, did we lose you again?
I think she's still there, just muted and hiding.
Okay, she's hiding. What? Okay, so if I have no background in tech. I graduated with a degree in psychology, and I'm honestly intimidated. So if I wanted to start a career in tech, like what is your advice to me?
I want to tell you that at the mid and senior level, I would say at least 50% of the people at my company do not have degrees in computer science. Our SVP of engineering also has a degree in psychology. I think right now there's so many opportunities to learn to code in these boot camps, and there are a lot of boot camps in New York City. This is something that also didn't exist when I was younger. I can give a shout out to some of the ones which I think are very good. There's the Recurse Center, which used to be called Hacker School. And for data scientists and data engineers, there's also another one called Insight Data. And they don't pay me or anything. I just know from recruiting that these are two places that have consistently developed talent in New York City, and they're very, very good. And I think that they're very positive for the New York City tech community. And so for people who don't have a degree in computer science, I think both of these are wonderful resources that you can apply to. And you get immersed with other talented people and a diverse set of people too, and you get to work on projects. And they offer like very, very good job placement services, and they have good reputations as well. So.
It's funny, a lot of people that work in tech right now didn't get degrees. And, I sometimes wonder, did it make sense to get a degree, right? I think it did in my case, because I was able to learn a lot more than I probably would have. But then again, I learned the concepts in my degree, but then those concepts can translate throughout many different languages or many different parts of navigating, I guess, the tech world. So I was easily able to teach myself CSS, PHP, JavaScript, and all of that because I understood the concepts. So I love the idea that all these boot camps are making technology and learning how to program more accessible for people. And definitely would recommend, if you're not in a school program for computer science or technology, and if you're interested in it, go to a boot camp, learn UX design, learn from the bottom up, the stack, and you'd be amazed at where you end up.
I can't hear her.
Yeah, me neither.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I was just talking to a couple friends of mine. They're working in Irvine, and I know that I'm constantly struggling with what I want to do in life. And I think it's the most beautiful thing when I talk to people who are very passionate about what they're currently doing. And, I've never thought to explore code. And I always say, like, well, I think it's too late for me because I have a degree in psychology. Like, sure, I could do a boot camp, but like, I feel so behind. And so it's like very reassuring to hear about like these boot camps and that there's still opportunity. And it's reassuring to hear that, Stephanie, you started later than what I'm like starting. I could start now. You started when you did, and you're doing just fine. And so that's kind of alleviating concerns. In addition to, my friends always talk about how my degree doesn't necessarily matter if I want to break into tech. If it's something that I'm interested in and something that I'm willing to focus my like passion in, it's certainly doable.
Oh, it is 100% doable. And I see it all the time.
So, I mean, what is it? I feel like it's so intimidating for these people who, you know, they go to the boot camps. And so say there's people in our audience right now who did go through a boot camp. How do you suggest that they set themselves apart from people who went to university and got like a computer science degree? Like, is there a difference, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters. I think you go to a good boot camp and you have good projects, and you know, the university doesn't matter that much. At Foursquare, we actually have a, so we do a phone screen, but I'm presented with a sanitized version of everybody's resume where they strip out your college, and that's to prevent biasing against certain name brand colleges. And this is something that would help me because I went to Princeton and Harvard, but if I applied to Foursquare, none of my interviews would see that. So I would be on the same footing as somebody who went to a college that no one heard of. So I think what matters after if you do well on the phone screen and you come in, what matters is actually how well you do on the interview. And so I wouldn't put that much stock into the fact that you don't have certain words on your resume, because I think everybody's well aware of the fact that there's a ton of talent out there that just doesn't, not everybody has a degree from MIT who's talented. There's an incredible amount of talent out there. So you have to throw yourself out there and, you know, just try.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, getting that degree, it really comes down to, how do you learn best? Do you learn best in like a formal school setting, or do you learn best in, you know, a abbreviated version? And then it really, like, after your first job, no one really looks at where you went to school or how you learned what you do. You know, like, it's about what you do. So even coming out of a program or coming out of school, work on projects, you know, get a feel for it so that you can show them that you understand. A lot of tech jobs, they'll give you a test as part of your interview. And as long as you do well on the test and you can explain the concepts, they don't care where you went to school. You know, as long as you understand what you're doing or what you're supposed to be doing, that's all that matters.
And so again, along your journey, I'm sure you spoke to somebody who was also interested in this path. So like, was there any advice that was specifically shared with you that was very instrumental to your career?
Along my journey, I never knew anyone that was a computer scientist or studied computer science besides my professors. And honestly, the professor my very first computer science professor is the one and the only reason why I actually stayed in the program, because she literally, when I didn't understand concepts, I would go to her and she just happily helped me. It wasn't until I went to the Grace Hopper conference last year that I realized the vast amount of women in technology that I had never understood or noticed or seen before, because, you know, like always, most of my jobs were mostly men. I remember being in one of the sessions and literally looking around like, and it also made me want to infect a lot more people and help navigate a lot more people towards this, because, you know, it's a great field to be in, you know, and it's a challenging field, and you have people, you deal with, you know, translating people's wants and needs into this programming code. So it's a really great field to be in. It's very interesting, actually. I've never had anyone like really be like, you should do computer science, or you should continue in computer science. And I just decided that that's what I wanted to do and just went for it.
And what about you, Stephanie? Was there any particular advice that you found helpful on your journey to where you are now?
Yeah, actually, there's advice I wish I could listen to more, and I struggle with all the time. And it's basically, don't listen to the devil on your shoulder. That's imposter syndrome. And I think this is something which really affects women and minorities so much more than it affects white men, though there are men with imposter syndrome as well. I think it is, I meet so many people who are so talented, and then they're always just even the way they speak, they undercut themselves and say, I don't know anything about this, and then they'll give you like the most beautiful explanation, which actually shows that they have this depth of knowledge. And to learn how not to shoot yourself in the foot, or how to even send an email and remove all the words saying like, well, I'm not sure, I don't think this, like as simple, small things like that. I think I wish I had taken that advice more seriously and believed the advice when I was younger. But it's something it's very difficult to do.
And is there any advice that you took that you wish you hadn't taken?
I'm going to let Dorsey go first on this because I have to think about it. Actually, I'm drawing a blank, but I might be able to come up with something in a few minutes. So,
like, is there any
advice that you wish?
Yeah, the question is.
Sorry, one more time with the question.
Given advice that you followed, like that's kind of similar to your career path now that you wish you hadn't followed, like maybe you thought it was a waste of time, or
like bad advice?
Yeah, have you ever, like, what is some bad advice that maybe you hear new hires kind of reiterating at your company?
I don't know so much advice. I've been doubted a lot. And I remember, so going back to first, like before I even started college, and we, like all of the majors were set up in the cafeteria of the school, and you got to go up to the head of the major and talk to them. And so I went up to the computer science table and I sat down and I was like, I want to do computer science. And the head of the department looked at me and he goes, are you sure? It's a lot of work. Yeah, I'm sure. This is what I want to do. And so I feel like I've been doubted more than anything, and I've just put that aside. And that's something that I think being doubted is probably worse than getting bad advice, because then it makes it lowers your self-esteem and makes you think that you can't do it. But in reality, we can. It's a matter of how much are you going to apply yourself and how much you're going to put towards doing it. But I don't think I've ever gotten like bad advice. Just a lot of, are you sure you can do this? Are you sure you want to do this? I don't think you can do this. And I'm like, well, yeah, I can. And here we go.
Right. So oh, sorry, Stephanie, you can.
Oh, I received advice from an older relative. I was talking about salary negotiation. Salary and promotion negotiation, and his advice to me. And I think this was a generational and a cultural thing. But his advice was, if you work hard, then your company will naturally notice, and the promotion and the raise will fall into your lap. And this is patently not true. And that is advice which I did not take. And I was very happy not to take that. So.
So like because the whole doubting thing, it's kind of ringing some similar bells. When I was at school, a lot of me and my peers, when we would go to just basic level of academic advising, I remember one of my advisors was telling me that I would not be able to declare the major that I wanted to declare for whatever reason. But then also I sought second opinion from my actual major advisor, who said, no, you're good, you're on track to actually graduate early. So how do you, for those people that like kind of push doubt in your direction, like how do you go about navigating that? Because it is so discouraging, and that kind of also leads back into the whole imposter syndrome thing. And that makes people like not want to pursue companies like Adobe, like, oh, Adobe's huge. Like, there's no way. Like, if my advisor says that I can't even declare this major, like, how can I picture myself at Adobe? Who should I really be listening to?
You should be listening to people like us and knowing that everybody's gone through experiences like that. When I was a first-year graduate student at Harvard, somebody called the math department for advice in number theory. That was what I was studying. That was what I was sent to Harvard to do. And when he heard my voice, he said he didn't want to talk to me because he wanted to talk to a real mathematician. This is just something that happens. it just happens, and it sucks. And those people, I mean, it would be nice if we could, if I could put them in their place and everything, but sometimes it's not really worth fighting everybody who has that attitude, and so you just ignore them. And I think it's very helpful to talk to other people, other women and other minorities who've been through the same experience, because then you start thinking, okay, this is actually normal and it sucks, but I know it happens to other people, and I can draw support from my network to get over these obstacles.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also say follow your gut. And 9 times out of 10, like your gut has your back all the time, right? So if you feel strong and passionate about something, and some people are doubting you about it, I would, like Stephanie said, I would just move directions and move to people who are more positive. And you'll learn to surround yourself with people who are more positive and, you know, kind of are your cheerleaders around all of it. I remember working full time and getting my MBA, and literally sitting there and going home after class and being like, Mom, whose idea was this? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't understand. And she would always just calm me down and be like, Dorsey, don't worry. It's gonna get better. You know, you're almost done. And it helped. It worked. And she was like my cheerleader at that moment. So whenever you're feeling doubt for yourself or doubt about anything, find that person who's gonna boost you up and just talk to them and get like a little bit of a pep talk, and then you'll be fine. And don't let people steal your thunder. I know a lot of people, you know, when people have doubt, they try to steal this happiness from you, and don't let them steal it. I know it's really hard, and that's why you need that cheerleader to kind of push you along, to be like, no, you're doing this. Come on, you got this. And had it not been for my mom, I probably wouldn't have finished my MBA. It was it was a lot of work.
So positive support networks are very key. Taking
Yeah.
care of yourself, very key.
Yeah, and I'm going to say something which is somewhat negative, and I apologize for it in advance, but when you stay in tech and you're 41 like I am, these people are everywhere, and they're all up and down the management chain, and you just have to just deal with it and learn to navigate it, and it's tough.
I kind of want to open it up to some questions from our viewers. I do have a question from Elsie Ingerbauer. Apologies if I butcher the name. Elsie asks, so I just graduated from General Assembly with a full stack certificate, and I'm having trouble getting a job because of negative connotations behind them. How does one overcome that?
I don't think there are negative connotations with General Assembly. The man who sits next to me, who's my mentee and who's a wonderful data scientist at Foursquare, is also a General Assembly graduate. And so I'm sorry I didn't shout out to them earlier, but I always thought that they were known as a good program as well. So no.
Did you want to add anything, Dorsey?
I don't have much experience with boot camps and taking other, I guess, because I went down the traditional route with computer science. But I would say I'm really big on work on a side project. One of the jobs that I interviewed at, I literally, I just walked in and there was kind of interview just asking questions, and I showed them my work. And at that point, if it hadn't been before, I feel like before I showed them my work, they were kind of like, and then I showed them my work or this side project that I was working on, and they were like, oh, you designed that? You did that? And, if you have something to show for what you've learned, I sometimes feel like that's more powerful than where you got your education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have to say that finding a first job anywhere, no matter what your background is always hard. I applied to 200 jobs when I graduated with a PhD in mathematics from Harvard. I got 199 rejections. So I don't think it's necessarily maybe you don't have the right words on your resume. I think entry-level jobs are just hard to get all across the board. But after you get the first job, it gets much easier than that.
So regarding kind of touching back on what Dorsey was talking about with the side projects, how do you know what kind of projects to tackle on the side? How do you find time in addition to, is it okay to show off a project that is maybe not finished?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah, totally. Finding time, literally, when I worked on my side project, it was, you know, before or after my commute, maybe I'd stay awake a little bit longer, because I knew the importance of having this skill that I was still very new at and being able to showcase that skill. And then that project that I showed them, I got pieces of it working. So not like the greater whole of the whole thing, but I got pieces of it working enough to be able to show this is what it does. And so, yeah, you don't need to do a whole project from start to finish, but maybe something small. I know one of my jobs, I had to create a game as part of my interview. So I did this game and I just showed them the game, and it just shows what kind of concepts, or shows that I understand concepts. So yeah, not having something complete it's just doing something just to show that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. For me, my side projects have always come from the hobbies which I have. So I enjoy scuba diving on the side, and I ended up building out a website which runs a scuba diving fill station, and that was my side project. But it's because it was something which it was a hobby which I had. And then the other projects which I have in GitHub are also very much related. One of them's basically a math project, which is always going to be my hobby. And so, yeah.
Okay, and another question that we have from the crowd, Nikutsi says, I'm a third-year CS major, and I'm wondering exactly how do I get a tech job or internship I have absolutely no experience with. I don't know what to showcase on my cover letters.
Showcase the classes that you've taken. And then once again, to use the P word, projects which you've done, if you can show them. It's okay not to have internships. I never had an internship my entire life, ever. So I always just did research in math, and was doing not working for companies or anything. I always was working for universities and stuff. So yeah.
I would say in terms of when you're interviewing, something that I learned back in college when I first created my first resume was look at the job and tailor your resume towards the job. So yeah. Even if you don't have, like in college, I got my first internship. I was very lucky with Pepsi. But before that, I worked at like the help desk to do with software at all. Like maybe I put software on computers, but I never, like, you don't create software. So just finding some skills that are needed from the job rec and add them, like ways that you've actually used those skills in your, in a job that you had, or something like that. And just that's the way that I normally tailor my resume. Every single job that I apply for, I comb through my resume based off of what the requirements are for the job and redo it. I actually did get a resume writer at one point, which I thought was a waste of money because I didn't use anything that she gave me. Also, my current resume is very colorful like I am. So, sometimes making your resume stand out, a well-formatted resume sometimes is really eye-catching to people. So even if you don't have like all the skills, it just shows that you put effort and time into creating this, bio of yourself. Also, I like the whole first paragraph when people highlight themselves or highlight, what are they looking for? Who are they? That also is a nice place to add in keywords that were in the rec for the job into your resume. So hopefully it gets picked up.
And so once you make it past the resume portion, and you nail the interview, what are some common technical questions that you've encountered in some of the interviews that you've had at these companies? I'll start with Stephanie.
The technical questions that people have asked me?
Yeah, some common, if there are any.
I think algorithms for coding. I've never had an interview which didn't ask me about algorithms. I think a lot of I do a lot of machine learning, and I think I'm going to flip the table because the past 3 years I've been more on the interviewing side, and I'll tell you what I look for in a candidate. a lot of people can take an undergraduate course in machine learning and do the undergraduate and do maybe like an online class in machine learning. But the analogy I use is that I'm not looking for somebody who can just drive the car. I want to find somebody who knows what's going down under the hood. So if they tell me about a machine learning project that they're working on, a lot of times I flip the tables. The first thing I do is I ask them why they chose the model which they chose. If they don't have compelling reasons like, I chose this model because I knew that it's going to be performant under these conditions, it's a little bit of a red flag to me. And I like to flip the tables to them because in my experience, whenever I try and write a machine learning model, it never works on the first try. And so I tell them, I have so many experience with failures, I never run out of ideas. So I tell them like, okay, let's say that we implemented a model similar to yours and this and that happens. And all of a sudden this weird anomaly happens and it's not predictive at all. And I ask them to debug it on the spot. And anybody who has like a passion for this kind of stuff and who's gotten their hands dirty and experienced the failures, which I have, I think would have a good route to solving the problem. And that's typically what I look for in a candidate. So, and the one thing I don't want them to say is, oh, I read about it in a book and I just
an interview question.
Yeah.
I can't think of a technical interview question that I've had. But normally it's around like whatever I'm presenting, maybe the project that they gave me to do. And then they ask me, why did I do this? Why did I do that? Mm-hmm. That's really it. That's all that I've actually.
Okay. And then with just a few minutes left, I think I'll ask the final question, which is, how do you define success? Like, do you feel like you're successful? What does that look like, especially in a space where maybe you're not exactly the majority? How do you define success?
I'll let Dorsey go first.
Success to me, I have a lot of definitions of success because it depends on what I'm doing. So I'm training in Olympic weightlifting right now to hopefully go to the Olympics. So success in that place is getting my numbers up each time that I lift and my coach is like, good job. Success in work is knowing that I'm successful at work is going to work and wanting to work, like going to work and wanting to do, and feeling that I can do what I want to do. And that's successful. Like I've successfully, I have a successful career when I'm excited to go to work. And then, I think those are my only two, I don't know, just being happy and being able to eat, waking up and being happy.
I think this is a very personal question, but I don't mind answering it. I think that my metrics for success were more traditional when I was younger. First off, I was focused on tenure. And then when I moved into, when I moved out of academia, the primary metrics, because I was very junior in my career at the time, was promotions and salary. And I would just say that was the measure. But as I get older and I get more advanced in my career, I think the definition of success has really swung a lot more towards quality of life and having work-life balance, and also just having a happy marriage, which I do, and spending time with my husband and making sure that I take a lot of vacations to interesting places. And so my success now does not revolve around my career. So whereas it did 5 or 10 years ago, and I think so, and it'll probably change again in the next 5 or 10 years. So.
So it seems like success is more centered around the outside work aspect of our lives.
Yeah, I think the general trend for my friends who are my age is as you get older, it does tend towards quality of life more. And I think it's a very natural progression, because when you're junior to everybody else in the company, I think there's a lot of pressure to be like, okay, I just want to make sure that I don't screw things up. I want to make sure I want to prove myself. And then as you become mid-level and senior, that pressure goes away. And then you start to think, sometimes I think it's a little silly, like the pressure that the junior engineers put on themselves. And I'm always telling them that it's fine. You're doing a great job. You don't have to stay in the office till midnight and things. But I think it's a very natural thing to do. So it's a natural way to feel. So.
Yeah, to me, work-life balance has become greater and greater and greater. I've been in those stressful situations. I've been at work till like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, you know, and it happens. It's part of life. But I think that knowing that I can come home to my 2 little dogs and walk them and not be stressed out is like success, you know, like I've done it, people, you know, or being able to go away for a week and not freak out that the world is going to crash at work, success, you know, like just putting yourself in a good place is success. And I think realizing that you can't work yourself to death is a very important thing to know because it's not good. Burnout is not cool. It's real. It's not cool.
That's very important because I feel like if you are, you know, an unfamiliar face in these tech spaces, like i.e. you're a woman in these spaces, you feel like sometimes you have to overcompensate to kind of reach a certain level of success. And I'm glad that we're kind of ending on a note that's like, that's not what success necessarily looks like. Maybe success looks like this for Dorsey. Maybe it looks like that for Stephanie. But all in all, success looks like, are you happy with your like outside of work life? Is what it sounds like.
I don't know anyone who's left a job and thought, oh, I really should have worked harder a year ago. Like, does it really matter in the long run? You have to think about things like that.
All right, so I will go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned in. I'm Chanel from Uncubed. Thank you to Stephanie for tuning in. She's from Foursquare. And thank you so much for tuning in, Dorsey from Adobe. Anybody else interested in future online panels, please check your email because they are definitely coming. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.